unless a war breaks out in the next 3 hours, and except for my guests, Ambassador Orrin, Ambassador O'Brien, people who are subject matter specific about things, I'll be talking about the NBA gambling story today because it's huge. And Congress will be holding hearings. I don't know which committee, I don't know how, but gambling has now hit the front pages so hard that Congress will take notice, and we'll be back to the Kefauver hearings. And if you don't know what they are, go to AI and look it up. We're going to have that because a lot of people are going to look up at this and say, really? Now, it may just be that people from Ohio know more about gambling problems than other people because of Pete Rose, because of former Ohio State quarterback Art Schlichter, because this summer, Emmanuel Clase, the best reliever in the American League, and Luis Ortiz, who was part of the key rotation for the Guardians, both got benched. There are allegations that they're involved in a gambling scandal, but no charges have been brought, and they have not been suspended, so they are innocent until proven guilty. But this story today, well, let's start with FBI Director Kash Patel earlier today, cut number 3.
Good morning. Today we are here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Cosa Nostra. The men and women up here standing with me represent a small portion of the leadership team that brought profound justice in an era that needed it more than any. I'll just highlight some of the details in the case and the FBI work, and then you'll hear from the others. But as you now know, individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today, former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Cosa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchesi crime families. And you'll hear more about those details today. The charges and the arrests that were taken down across this country range from wire fraud, money laundering, extortion, robbery, illegal gambling. This FBI will leave no room for any perpetrator of crime across this country. You hear a lot about our work of defending the homeland and crushing violent crime. Well, this work is also representative of a colossal portion of the FBI's mandate to keep America safe and to keep our entertainment industry fair and secure. The men and women that are standing up here today worked tireless hours, days, months, and years. And the fraud is mind-boggling. It's not hundreds of dollars. It's not thousands of dollars. It's not tens of thousands of dollars. It's not even millions of dollars. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars in fraud and theft and robbery across a multi-year investigation. And we could not have done it without...
Stop right there for a second. I want to stress it's a multi-year investigation. So it precedes the Trump administration. The reason I stress that is there are a lot of takes on this out there today. Everyone ought to be saying, what did we do with gambling? What did we unleash on the world? How much money is at stake? What other sports are going down? Stephen Smith, who I really enjoy, I think he's a very talented entertainer on television using sports as his medium. He had the craziest take of all on ESPN, cut number 13.
How many times, for one incident after another, have I said, Trump is coming? He's coming. I'm going to say it on national television again. Bad Bunny is performing at the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden you hearing ICE is going to be there, looking to engage in mass deportations. The Super Bowl, disrupting things. Big night for the NBA. Wembanyama put on a show. That has now been smeared because we're talking about this story, okay? Remember, Trump has a long, long history connected to the world of sports because he had those casinos. Where do you think folks were coming half the time? I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about the culture. When people want to go to a casino, when people want to gamble, when people want to party, or whatever the case may be,
See, you got it? Trump did this. That's the craziest thing I've heard on TV in a long time. Multi-year investigation involving the mob and NBA players and coaches across 11 states, and Trump did it. That's TDS, big time. Put that aside. Let's go back to the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York, Joseph Nocella, cut number one. Good
But
clip.
my message to the defendants who've been rounded up today is this. Your winning streak has ended. Your luck has run out. Violating the law is a losing proposition, and you can bet on that.
All right, so every single cliche in the world was used in that statement, and it will be used tonight. I'm going to be on special report tonight. I don't know if we're talking about this or not on the panel, but it'll just be in the coverage. Look, I'll give you 2-to-1 odds that it is. Cut number two. This is the Assistant Director of the New York Field Office of the FBI, Christopher Rea, at the same press conference. Cut number two.
3 of the named defendants are charged for their alleged roles in both schemes. This alleged illegal gambling operation hustled unwitting victims out of tens of millions of dollars and created a financial pipeline for La Cosa Nostra to help fund and facilitate their organized criminal activity. Victims were attracted to play alongside well-known professional athletes and coaches like Chauncey Billups, only to be unknowingly deceived through rigged shuffling machines, fixing the odds in their favor, as alleged and as you just heard from the U.S. Attorney's Office. This alleged scheme wreaked havoc across the nation, exploiting the notoriety of some and the wallets of many to fund the Italian crime families here in New York.
All right, now, I want you to be clear at the beginning. There are 2 different investigations coming together here. One of the high-stake poker game that were rigged, that celebrity athletes were used to draw marks in. It's like watching The Sting with Paul Newman and Robert Redford from, what, 72, 74? It's an elaborate sting. And the mob stung a lot of people. And people want to play next to NBA players. They come with their big wallets and they lose all their money. But there's a second investigation, which is about throwing games, fixing games, like the Black Sox scandal of 1919, I think, Shoeless Joe Jackson. All of sports, college. Look, it's going to be down to Little League before we know it, given the ubiquity of online gambling. And there's got to be a stop to it. And you can bet there will be, I'm going to say you can bet like 20 times today. You can bet there will be hearings. You can bet there's going to be an opinion from every legislator who's able to reach a microphone today, because it is an addiction problem. It is a domestic violence problem. It is a problem of organized crime. It is a problem of the young culture not understanding how endorphins work when the little machine goes off when you're laying down prop bets, and it's going to ruin sports. It's already taken a toll, but it's going to ruin sports. More coming up throughout the show. You can bet as well that andrewandtodd.com are the very best people to go to if you have to buy a house. There, I used it. I'm going to do it again and again and again. You can bet, actually, on andrewandtodd.com because they are a bank. 888-888-1172. They are bankers. They lend you the money. They underwrite the loan. They don't want you to take out too much of a mortgage loan. They don't want you to pay too much. They want you to be able to manage the loan. They want to help you from start to finish. AndrewandTodd.com did my mortgage when my fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I moved from the West Coast to the East and had to buy a home inside the Beltway. They've done mortgages for all the members of my family. They've done mortgages for Dwayne and lots of people within the Salem News Channel, Salem Media Network, for thousands of my listeners. Why? Because they are very, very good at it, and they care about you. They're not looking to scalp you. They're not looking to make too much money from you. They are looking to serve you. If you've got to move, if you've got to refinance, if you have to consolidate debt, call andrewandtodd.com about using your house first, 888-888-1172, or go to andrewandtodd.com. They're very best at this. They are the very best at this. Start with them if you need a mortgage, 888-888-1172. Let me also remind you that we have a great sponsor in the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, I'm going to talk with Dr. Oren later from Israel, Ambassador O'Brien as well. But the people of Israel need your help. There is a banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Every donation is tax deductible, goes right to the IFCJ. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews have been working in Israel for decades. Please support them, especially today when your generous contributions will be matched and doubled. The banner is at HughHewitt.com. My guest is Noah C. Rothman, senior writer for National Review, and apparently living in a cave somewhere in New Jersey, because he's the only person in New Jersey who not only has not heard of the NBA scandal, but has no connection to it. I think actually everyone in New Jersey is connected to this, Noah. How did you miss it?
I missed it until I got into Fox News this morning, at which point a producer said, have you heard the big news? There's a running joke between us that I somehow miss these major stories that most of the nation is tuned into the second they happen. The earlier one being a series of Idaho killings and the trial of their killer, which was apparently a national sensation, but
yes, that was a big deal too.
Yeah.
So you missed the NBA story. Yeah. Now
yeah, my
I
wife
assume
will fill me
then you lack the sports gene like Kurt Schlichter. Kurt says he doesn't care about sports ball. It's an all-inclusive don't care. Are you in that camp?
I am, unfortunately, but I was blessed by the Lord with two young boys who are very athletic, and my wife coaches basketball, so she'll fill me in.
Okay, teach them about gambling the same way I did. Take them to Vegas when they're 13 or 14 and show them all the people who are just leaving their money behind. Here's what I want to get your reaction.
That's the other thing, because I don't gamble, and I've never been to Vegas, so that's probably part of it.
I don't gamble because the one time I have, it was a quick way to lose $100 in about 5 seconds in Las Vegas. And after that, I learned the only thing I do is play cards with friends. And at Vegas, if I'm in Vegas, I'll find a 7-card stud old-fashioned game at the Flamingo or someplace, because I don't. It's way beyond me. It's a skill set that I don't have.
I don't have fun losing money. Yeah, what's the fun in that?
I'd rather put it in the market. But here is Trump derangement syndrome. First of all, this is vast. And the Kash Patel presser today, let me play you just a little bit of that. Cut number 3.
Good morning. Today we are here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Casa Nostra. The men and women up here standing with me represent a small portion of the leadership team that brought profound justice in an era that needed it more than any. I'll just highlight some of the details in the case and the FBI work, and then you'll hear from the others. But as you now know, individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today, former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Casa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchesi crime families. And you'll hear more about those
you get
details. the
scope here, Noah. It's been going on for years. The Bureau's been working on this for years. It involves the mob, and it's a big deal. Here's what I'd love your comment on. Stephen Smith, who I think is a fabulous broadcast talent on ESPN, but he's got TDS, and people talk about him running for the Democratic nomination. Stephen got on ESPN this afternoon and said this, cut number 13.
How many times, for one incident after another, have I said, Trump is coming? He's coming. I'm going to say it on national television again. Bad Bunny is performing at the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden you hearing ICE is going to be there, looking to engage in mass deportations. The Super Bowl, disrupting things. Big night for the NBA. Wembanyama put on a show. That has now been smeared because we're talking about this story, okay? Remember, Trump has a long, long history connected to
it goes on, Noah. Trump. Do you get it? Stephen Smith made this into a Trump story.
I don't get it. I'm very perplexed. We haven't heard those names of those Italian crime families in a very long time. I wasn't operating under the impression that the Italian mafia was a thing of the past. Apparently not. I mean, that's a profound investigatory coup by the FBI, and obviously a political story, to say nothing of busting up a ring of gambling that may have involved game fixing, as far as I understand it. So this is an apolitical story. The only person making it political is Stephen A. Smith. And why? To indicate that the president is engaged in the basic act of law enforcement? He seems to be objecting to broad swaths of what law enforcement is supposed to do, including deporting illegal immigrants. The Puerto Rican Bad Bunny is not one. Puerto Rico's in the United States. And his fans presumably are also mostly American, and in order to get into the stadium, you would have to be in order to show identification. So it's just a very disjointed series of thoughts that don't bear any reflection on our shared reality. It's more indicative, I think, of what you're indicating it is, which is just sort of a temperamental dispositional opposition to what Donald Trump does because Donald Trump is doing it.
And to everything, there is a view of executive branch authority, which, while vast, is not unlimited, and you can't get an FBI investigation to indict four mafia families and high-profile NBA stars from last season for their gambling last year before Trump was president. It's just indicative of, like, Jen Psaki suggesting that Usha Vance is a victim of domestic violence as a joke. People have lost their minds, Noah.
They've lost their minds.
Does it ever end?
But this is a demand problem, right? They're providing the supply for an intense anger, frustration, hostility, a demand by the Democratic activist base to see some grand gesture, some futile gnashing of teeth and rending of garments that expresses precisely the same anxiety that they're feeling. And some of the more dangerous expressions of that are what we've seen in the form of violence over the course of this summer. The Congress members who are telling Axios reporters that their constituents are calling them up and demanding that they be shot for the cause. By whom, we don't know. But they want to see some bloodshed. They want to see violence. They want to see expressions of hostility and anger that are unthinking, deliberately unthinking, because this is not the time for thought. This is not the time for strategy or tactics. This is a time for emotion and pique and action for action's sake. And that is what the Democratic Party wants to see at the base level, and anybody who wants to compete for their attention is going to have to give it to them.
Well said, Noah. I can't improve on that. That's why we have Noah C. Rothman on. Follow him on X at Noah C. Rothman. Thank you, Noah. I am sponsored by the wonderful people at Relief Factor. I'm in the Relief Factor studio, and I have been around and gone all day and doing stuff tonight and over to Special Report and, just busy. Relief Factor keeps me in the game. It ought to keep you in the game every day in the first hour. I take it on the air if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, if you're listening on the Salem Media Network, if you're listening on one of our wonderful radio affiliates. Relief Factor every day, whether or not I'm feeling any particular minor ache or pain. And I'm not. I'm feeling great today because it's been a fun, wonderful day. But I still take my Relief Factor every day, and I want you to give it a try. Call 1-800, the number 4 in the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. Or go to their website, and you can find the starter pack there. Or you can ask for it at 1-800, the number 4-RELIEF. $19.95, 3-week supply. Go and find it at relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. If you take it every day like I do, you'll be rid of the minor aches and pains and accompany exercise and aging. You should be doing the former. You're definitely doing the latter. I typically save Ben Domenech for Fridays because the editor-at-large at The Spectator, the Fox News contributor, and most important of all, the host of the Big Ben podcast, is usually great for a week in review. But he can't do tomorrow, so I said, come in today, and sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart. And we're lucky because Ben will have a good hot take on Stephen Smith's deranged take in just a moment. Ben, I got to say, though, I thought the Big Ben interview with Katie Herzog is a reveal for people my age. I had no idea about drinking and COVID and the demo. And how, I mean, literally not on my radar, had never heard of it before. That was a fabulous interview.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear that, Hugh, and I hope I hope that others felt that same way. It's absolutely something that has dominated the conversation among younger people who had to navigate COVID in often very private and unfortunately, sort of disaggregated terms where they were not able to see friends. And one of the big things that came out of that was a much higher level of use of drinking and drugs, particularly alcohol use, that led people into a position where, folks who had been, just social drinkers or something like that ended up drinking alone and spending a lot of time alone in a way that was unhealthy. And I think Katie's book is really well timed to help people out of that kind of scenario, or people who, didn't have maybe family to lean on or friends close to buy. And she has her own, theories about that people can hear on the show and read in her book. But it's something that is, I think, of deep importance, and it's one of the big motivators why people have probably seen the explosion of non-alcoholic beer and other things that are available to people now. It's because of market demand from people who basically wanted to reset after the loneliness of COVID maybe put them in some bad habits.
I'm not a drinker. I'm rarely ever seen with a drink in my hand other than a non-alcoholic beer or a single malt scotch, and that's very rare. I have no capacity for liquor. But I had no idea about Beltway culture and liquor like you discussed. It was just a fabulous interview. I suggest to everyone who thinks they have a drinking problem or has someone in their family who's younger, in the younger demo, 18 to 40, to listen to this interview. I also got to say, Lucas Tomlinson was fabulous. Now, I know Lucas, and I know he's fabulous, but that was quite the reveal as well. I don't know what he meant about pretty soon we're going to see people with blue badges running around Gaza. I hope he didn't mean UN people, but he was just interesting on tomahawks. I had no idea about tomahawks. Did you?
That tomahawk, well, no, because, in fact, by the way, I had prefaced it to him by saying, hey, I want to talk about what this thing is actually really going on there. And he said, well, I think I got a fact check for you. And I said, save it for the show. And sure enough, I mean, it's like this, it's funny, Hugh, you get these things that are bandied around in the conversation in Washington, and then someone who actually knows what's going on can set things up in a way that is much more revealing about the limits of what policy could possibly achieve in that area. And I just think that, Lucas is one of the most insightful guys in the business. The thing I always say about Lucas is he is a perfect example to me of one of these guys who it's unfortunate that we only get to get his knowledge in 2-minute segments basically on Fox, because he knows a lot more. And hopefully, people will listen to it and learn something from it.
Now, he says it is a fabulous interview as well. Lucas is a straight news reporter. I don't know if they'll ever suggest he do a podcast. He could easily carry that. He could anchor. He can do whatever he wants. He's just that talented. Yeah. But it's a fabulous conversation. And I had all my notes ready to talk to you about Israel among young people, and that's going to have to wait, Ben, because I also heard you and Lucas talking about the Commanders. So you're both football junkies, and you're addicted to a bad team. Are you a gambler?
I am. In fact, if George Pickens had scored a touchdown, I got all the other touchdowns right in my. And I typically bet responsibly, but then I do one that's irresponsible. And in this case, if George Pickens he got great yards, but if he'd gotten a touchdown, then I would be talking to you $15,000 richer today.
My generation just does not get prop bets, right? We know lines, and people have been looking at lines since lines were invented by Vegas. Whenever they know the line, but during the break, Ben is going to stay with me, and we're going to talk about this. But I want your first take going into the break. I'm not going to play.
I want to hear the Hugh Hewitt reaction to Uncut Gems. That's what I want.
I love the movie. I loved Uncut Gems. But I want to know what, so we can tease people into the break and keep them. Are you shocked as I am by this story?
I'm not shocked at all. I'm not shocked at all. I truly believe that the NBA has a very, very deep problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ben, you know how sports fans are. First thing I read through the story today is, please don't involve the Cavaliers. Please don't involve the Cavaliers.
Yep. That's what. No. See, that's a good fan.
So, unfortunately, there is a game involving the Cavaliers that is mentioned, that somehow is involved in the investigation, but no Cavaliers players mentioned. But what I said in my opening, go ahead.
Relief.
Yeah, I have a big relief. Yeah. We're not losing Donovan Mitchell. Evan Mobley's not going to jail. But Ohio people have lived through Pete Rose, Art Schlichter, this summer Emmanuel Clase and Louis Ortiz getting benched but not yet accused of anything, but they've been benched, so there's something very bad there. So we're kind of used to gambling scandal. This is 11 states and 4 of the families. It's so big. Why are you not shocked?
The reason I'm not shocked is because this is a cultural element of the NBA that people have been aware of for a very long time. Now, personally, I think it's ridiculous in the sense that you look back at the amounts of money involved and the people involved, and a lot of this is just like, it doesn't make sense as a mathematical question, for people who have the kind of contracts that they have to participate in things that will, take that contract down to zero.
Yep.
But there is a cultural element here that I think we have to recognize that is very prevalent in the NBA, and we need to keep in mind that the NBA, unlike other sports, has massive potential for this, particularly given the facts that we know all the way back from the Donaghy scandal about the capability of refs to change the game, the capability of players to change the game in ways that directly affect props. And look, some of them in the past have been pretty dumb about it, which is how they got caught. This thing seems to be, breaking it open in a way that is, I think really going to be revelatory for a lot of people. But at the same time, Hugh, I will just say, this stuff, if you think that this has been going on for a long time, as I have, and by the way, as it happens, just 48 hours ago, I was having a conversation with our friend Brent Scher about this. We are both of the opinion that people have been leaning on the NBA in different ways off the court that have affected the outcome of games, affected player props, et cetera, for years.
How about the lottery? Do you think the draft lottery? Because everyone always says it's rigged.
I think it's completely rigged. I think it's completely rigged. Come on. Come on. Look at what happened with the Mavs this year. Come on. Okay. Now, but here's the thing. I think people are willing to tolerate that type of thing to a certain extent. A difference is now that gambling is legal on these games, suddenly people start paying a lot more attention to what player prop bets look like. They start paying attention to a guy who doesn't look like he's trying that hard or looks like he's trying hard to do one specific thing. And that, to me, is just very revelatory. And I mean, look, it's funny in the old days how we got to listen to Al Michaels do everything but say, yes. Oh, well, a lot of people are happy right now.
Yeah.
But it's
the old days is what I remember. And we had so much to talk about. Got blown up by the NBA gambling story. Now, Ben, some of the audience is new, so I got to play 2 clips for them and for you. Kash Patel, followed by Stephen A. Smith on the NBA scandal. Here first is FBI Director Patel, cut number 3.
Good morning. Today we are here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Cosa Nostra. The men and women up here standing with me represent a small portion of the leadership team that brought profound justice in an era that needed it more than any. I'll just highlight some of the details in the case and the FBI work, and then you'll hear from the others. But as you now know, individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today, former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Cosa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchesi crime families. And you'll hear more about
Stop
those
right there,
details
Ben.
today.
You've got that. The audience gets an idea. This has been going on for years. It's very big. It involves all the traditional alleged mobster families. Then Stephen A. Smith on ESPN earlier today says this, cut 13.
How many times, for one incident after another, have I said Trump is coming? He's coming. I'm going to say it on national television again. Bad Bunny is performing at the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden you hearing ICE is going to be there, looking to engage in mass deportations. The Super Bowl, disrupting things. Big night for the NBA. Wembanyama put on a show. That has now been smeared because we're talking about this story, okay? Remember, Trump has a long, long history connected to the world of sports.
All right, so you've heard enough, Ben Domenech. You have the floor.
Yeah, because I'm sorry. It's the idea that this is meant to disrupt. This is not the point where people are really tuning into the season. Victor Wembanyama, Victor Wembanyama. No, it's one of these things. It's one of these things where you see the person's frame as soon as they start talking, and it's absurd. That's just TDS that's out of control. The idea that this is somehow connected to the president's resentment of certain political opinions shared by NBA stars is absolutely ludicrous.
It gets to the WNBA eventually, but I mean, it's just absolute TDS.
No, it's crazy. And by the way, this is one of the reasons why, as effective as a communicator as Stephen A. Smith is, look, he's just not cut out for the world of politics. But one thing that I do think coming out of this that is really important is legal gambling is making people pay more attention to this stuff. And the more attention that they pay, that's good. Sunlight is good. Learning about these things is good. If it's been going on for years, as the FBI claims, as Kash Patel is saying there, then it's something that should have been caught years earlier. And if anything, the question should be, why didn't this happen under Joe Biden? Why didn't this happen under Barack Obama? Well, Stephen A. Smith doesn't want to deal with that. He just wants to turn this into some kind of race game, which is really his, it's such a lazy crutch in terms of the way that people frame this stuff. Look, I personally think that this is the beginning and not the end of this. That there's going to be more that comes out about the different behaviors of people who are involved in this league, because there's just so much corruption that gets rumored about and that gets indicated in terms of some of the drama with these teams. And there's a lot of things that don't make sense that would make sense if there was some kind of influence going on. And I think that, look, I can't wait for the episode of Pablo Torre Finds Out, where we're talking about this a lot more than we are whether the Clippers, did an underhanded deal or not.
So now let me ask you if you think the Kefauver hearings are a famous deal on organized crime in the 1950s. Is there the Kefauver hearings 2.0 coming as a result of this?
I think there is. I think that there's too much attention on this. And this is, think about the partners that the NBA has. Think about how embedded that they are within the business of ESPN and the Disney Corporation because of that. This is a major issue, and because of the different, the prominence of this story, I think that we're going to see a lot of attention brought to bear by politicians who might not otherwise have perhaps looked into this kind of thing before, but because of the financial amounts involved and because of the legal gambling involved, you're going to have a lot of parties here that are demanding answers, and I think that's only going to increase.
A couple of years ago, Ben, I got asked on short notice, obviously somebody canceled, to address the Republican Senate conference at their breakfast, and it turned into an hour and a half talking about what do we do about NIL, of which my opinion was nothing because Ohio State has first mover advantage. But now everyone is involved, and I think colleges have to be very aware that their athletes, especially they're like O-linemen who aren't going to get drafted, or their point guard who is not going to get. They have a lot of incentive to make a lot of money. I assume you saw that NCAA announcement that they're now going to be able to allowed to bet on pro games. So it's going to be one of. I did not see that. Yes. Look, this is opening up. It's opening up a marketplace, and you're going to see, so many other people who have skin in the game. And that makes people care about this. And it doesn't matter whether their unit is $10 or whether their unit is $1,000. But it's one of these things where the fact that people have money in the game means they're going to be paying more attention. And if this stuff comes to light, as much as it might hurt the game in the temporary sense, it will actually, I believe, be healthier in the long term than people like me who have in the past said, well, of course David Stern did something with that envelope. Okay, last question, quick exit question. How much would you pay Michael Lewis for an advance right now on the book for this topic? Oh my gosh! I don't. It's astronomical. How can you not feel romantic about being Michael Lewis in this moment? In this moment, and you would say, "Oh my gosh, he will be able to understand and explain it all and lay it all out for us all in a narrative that makes sense." Every publisher in America is bidding on him right now. Ben Domenech, always a pleasure. Follow him at B Domenech on X. Read him at The Spectator. I read your article today. I had so much to talk to you about. We'll do it next Friday, Ben, because this was too much fun. Thank you, my friend. I'm about to explain prop bets to those of you in the United States who don't understand it, but who listen to this show, by reminding you there are 15 segments every day of the Hugh Hewitt Show. And I've got between 10 and 15 reads a day where I thank my sponsors on the show. Two of those sponsors are besthotgrill.com and myphdweightloss.com. And myphdweightloss.com, 864
644
1900, that's
864
644
1900.
is often mixed up with our friends at besthotgrill.com because they go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Yes.
So a proposition bet would be, I bet that Hugh does his Best Hot Grill spot with the My PhD weight loss spot today. That's a prop. The proposition is Hugh is going to do this. And then I just did it, and so you would win the proposition. A crazier prop bet is I bet he will do it in the first hour, or I bet he will merge myphdweightloss.com with besthotgrill.com in the fifth segment of the first hour, and that Dwayne will be involved, and that he'll mention Dwayne's World, and that it will follow Ben Domenech. You know, that's kind of a crazy prop bet. But if you'd made that prop bet today, you would have just won. That's a prop bet. Did that make sense, Generalissimo? You think people understand it?
Absolutely. And if people want to learn more, they go to DwayneWorld.com because that's where the podcast would be.
That's where the podcast is. You can explain it more. Now, myphdweightloss.com, Dwayne lost 50 pounds over 3 months. He's kept off almost 40 of it. He's going back on to lose 10 for the holiday, right?
That's the goal, yeah.
864
644
1900. No shots, no drugs, nothing like it. The old-fashioned way with coaching and great advice.
No, you don't have to gamble on shots.
You don't have to gamble on shots, and you don't have to lose all your money on shots either.
No, you don't.
It's actually a very good proposition that if you follow the rules and you adopt the system, you'll be like Dwayne. You'll lose 50 pounds over 3 months, if that's your goal.
Yes.
Now, what prop bet shall we make about besthotgrill.com? That people are buying grills more than they're buying fireballs, or that they're buying patio heaters?
Butterballs are turkeys. Fireballs are what Rhett sells. Butterballs are turkeys.
Oh, fireballs. Did I say butterballs?
Yes, you said butterballs.
No, I did not.
Yes, you did.
If we had an ability to play the tape back, I would play that. But I want to tell people to go to besthotgrill.com.
But if you really want to grill a turkey on a Best Hot Grill, that would be the way to do it.
You know, we have friends who grill turkeys, and I have never been convinced that's a good way to do a Thanksgiving turkey. Do you think it is? Maybe on the Solaire infrared grill you could pull that off.
No, I actually have my great-grandmother's turkey roaster from about 1952, a Westinghouse. It still works.
Well, of course, it was made in America by Westinghouse in 1952. BestHotGrill.com, American-made. Their grills, their patio heaters, their fireballs, Solaire infrared grill, all of it.
They get hotter quicker than Stephen A. Smith's take.
Yeah, that is hotter, quicker, but they're good, unlike Stephen A. Smith's take. I'll continue to update you on the NBA cheating scandal, and I'll be probably talking about that on Special Report tonight. I really have no idea what's coming because the news is breaking on that so quickly. But I do know that the vice president left Israel today, and I'm joined by Dr. Michael Oren, formerly ambassador from Israel to the United States, weekly guest here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. We much appreciate that. Dr. Oren, how do you think the visit of the vice president went?
Very well, very well. We could have given him a better send-off than we did, but very well. I think his understanding about how to proceed, how to disarm Hamas, what happens if Hamas doesn't disarm, who and what countries will be in the intermediary stabilizing force in Gaza, many issues, and what will be Israel's prerogatives, certainly to deal with any acts of aggression by Hamas. The bad send-off was a move by members of Knesset to pass a bill in favor of annexing parts of Judea and Samaria, as we call it, the West Bank. The vice president didn't take kindly to that. He said it was a stupid move.
Well, that is unfortunate, but I'm glad that it generally went well because he's obviously going to be a force in American politics, in office or out, for decades and decades, and needs to be a great friend as he has been to Israel. Now, Dr. Oren, you know how loose these 18 points are. the intermediate security force, once they move in, the IDF is going to be somewhat constrained, are they not? Are you in a hurry to have that happen, or do you think that's a step best saved for later?
No, if Hamas still has one gun, they'll use that force as a shield behind which they can fire that gun. And we know from the history of the Middle East that peacekeeping forces, and they say this is not a peacekeeping force, but it is a peacekeeping force, that peacekeeping forces in the Middle East only work when there's no peace to keep, right? And if there's actually peace to keep in Gaza, it'll be much more difficult. People forget we had European troops in Gaza. We had an American military delegation in Gaza. Everyone left. Everybody left. It was too dangerous. Yeah,
I forgot that.
Left. The Dutch were there, the Italians were there, the French were there. My good friend Keith Dayton was there, great guy. They all picked up and left. And no one is going to die for Palestine. No one's going to die for Israel, certainly. And so disarmament is absolutely the sine qua non of the success of the remaining points. Because once that goes into motion, now what you could have a situation where the Saudis and other Middle Eastern or Muslim countries could end run Hamas and say, okay, you're not going to disarm, we're going to make peace with Israel anyway. I published an article in today's Yediot in Hebrew. I have a weekly column in Hebrew, and I said, back in the Oslo process, we had what was called stage two. Okay, Oslo called for a number of stages, ending with a two-state solution. We got stuck at stage two. Stage two is when the Palestinian Authority controls Area A of the West Bank. Area B, it has political control, but military control, and the largest part of Judea and Samaria is C, which is under exclusive Israeli political and military control. That is called second stage. I said in my article, maybe we should have second stage in Gaza. It wouldn't be the end of the world. You have Hamas in political and military control over its little enclave. No one's going to invest there. People will live in debris. And the area under Israeli control will prosper, and there will be investment. And maybe that's the best we can hope for right now. And it's not the worst of all possible outcomes.
Well, I've heard people talk about the East Berlin, West Berlin analogy. And that made sense, except to my knowledge, there weren't tunnels running from East Berlin under West Berlin where terrorists or Stasi would pop up and shoot people. Do you think that Israel has got 95% of the tunnels closed that are at least under IDF-controlled territory?
No. What I heard was about 50%. But here's the big difference. Before the release of the hostages, we couldn't do anything about those tunnels. We couldn't fill them with seawater. We couldn't seal them with concrete. Now we can do that. We can do what the Americans did in Vietnam back in the 1960s. We can flood them with napalm and set up a match. There's many ways you can deal with tunnels now that we couldn't do because the hostages were down there. And I would imagine we will proceed to do precisely that.
But you will not. Let me put a statement in the form of a question. Will Israel tell us what they're doing in the tunnels? Because this is one broadcaster who thinks it's better that the West doesn't know.
I don't know why. Why should we keep that from anybody? It's nothing that's too sensitive. It's not exactly, the beeper and the pagers operation.
Only because you can't see it. No one will know that it's true or not. So if you can't verify it, it's pretty hard to make the assertion that they're closed. I would just close them.
The proof will be in the fact that Hamas can no longer, as you said, pop up out of the tunnels and fire an RPG at our soldiers' back. That'll be the proof. Now, they will continue to do it. They will have cells. They don't necessarily need the tunnels. They can have cells operating as they have cells operating in towns in the West Bank. They can have cells operating in the area of Gaza under our control. Undoubtedly, they'll have that. We're going to have to grapple with that. We are in the Middle East, let us not forget. But a stage two, a phase two of the 20 points, even if we can't move on to the other points in the program, again, is not the end of the world for Israel.
So, Dr. Orm, one of the things that English language Israeli media and certainly American media does not carry is how badly destroyed the Hamas leadership, in air quotes, for the benefit of people who aren't watching, just listening. I used air quotes. Hamas leadership has been destroyed. Who's running it, if anyone's running it? And do they actually have command and control anymore of whoever they call their rank and file?
They have a process where one guy meets his maker and another person moves up in line. It's not as if these guys are going to Harvard Business School. Okay, they're not. They haven't had a lot of training in administration, so they have enough training to run a terrorist organization. And yes, I think that their command and control has been impaired, but it's not diminished entirely. I put out a tweet. I don't tweet very often this week, and I implored President Trump not to fall for the oldest terrorist trick in the book, which is to say, there's a terrorist attack, and back in the day, it would be Yasser Arafat, the PLO, would say, we have nothing to do with it. It was a rogue operation. That's what they said about the 1972 massacre of Israeli Olympics in Munich. That's what they said about the outbreak of the Second Intifada in 2000. It's not us, it's the rogues. So Hamas says every time there's now an attack, they'll say it's not us, it's a rogue. We cannot play that trick. We cannot play that game. Every terrorist attack, we will say that the address for that terrorist attack is Hamas with whatever commanders and command control they have.
So I listened this week to Daniel Hartman and Yossi Klein Halevi suggesting that the United States is now controlling Israeli responses in Gaza. I would be very surprised if we'd gone Lyndon Johnson on Israel, or that Israel would allow us to go Lyndon Johnson on picking targets, etc. What's your assessment of that relationship right now?
Listen, it is very close. And as I said in this program many times, President Biden said don't, and everyone did. When this guy says don't, no one dare do. And that's not true for Israel. It's true for everybody in the Middle East, by the way. It's true for everybody in the Middle East. You think that the Qataris are going to take on Donald Trump? You think that the Emiratis, the Saudis are going to take on Donald Trump? No one is. He's a very powerful president in foreign affairs. So, yes, so our latitude is somewhat restricted, but we have a very open and I think constructive relationship with this administration. And we will make the case that if Hamas is not disarming, if Hamas is directing cells to open fire on Israeli soldiers and civilians, we'll go to the administration and say, listen, we're going to take these guys out. We want you to have our back.
All right, so Dr. Warren, last question, and thank you for a generous amount of time today. I don't try and explain Israeli politics very often, but it looks like the prime minister doesn't have to worry about his government collapsing until he decides to call for election. Is my assumption correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
So
now,
second
the
question, bonus
is
question.
He may go to elections early. I don't think
that's what I was going to ask you. That's the second question. When does he go to election?
Everyone's saying he's going to go to elections early. No, Israeli politics are a rodeo. Look what happened last summer. You had a 12-day war against Iran. Bibi was riding high, high, high. 2 weeks later, the whole issue of starvation and famine in Gaza, he was down the doghouse again. All right? You don't know. An election cycle is 3 months. 3 months is a long time in politics. So right now he's riding high. And I still think at the end of the day, someone doesn't wake up in the morning who would have voted for Yair Lapid or Benny Gantz. It's not going to get up in the morning and say, well, Donald Trump praised Bibi, so therefore I'm changing my vote to Bibi. It doesn't work like that.
Oh, interesting.
Bibi said once, famous or infamously, I don't care how the left divides its votes. At the end of the day, it's the same pool of votes.
Well said. Dr. Michael Oren, as always, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it very much. Follow him on X at Dr. Michael Oren, Dr. Michael Oren. Thank you, Michael. I'll be right back, America, with Ambassador Robert O'Brien, formerly National Security Advisor. But I do want to remind you, we are in part sponsored by the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. They are running a campaign right now asking for your donations to help rebuild, to help resilience, to help people who are suffering from PTS, to help the reservists who lost everything because they got called up 6 or 7 times and they weren't planning on that. The IFCJ has been doing work in Israel, from Israel, for decades and decades. Your donations are all tax deductible. Thanks to a generous donor to IFCJ, they're also being doubled today. So if you give $50, it's really $100. The banner is at the top of HughHewitt.com. I appreciate your generosity. So does the IFCJ, International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. The banner is at the top of HughHewitt.com. It is secure, it is safe, it is quick. Thank you for your generosity. Ambassador Robert C. O'Brien, longtime friend of mine, also former National Security Advisor to President Trump in his first term, now in American Global Strategies. Ambassador O'Brien, good to see you, although I saw you on X in this photo earlier this week. You and many of our friends from the Nixon family and foundation with you in the Oval. What's that all about? Explain it to our audience, please.
Well, it's nice to be back in the Oval Office. I hadn't been back for a couple of years, so it was good to be back with the president. The president's had an extraordinary record of making peace or getting ceasefires in conflicts around the world. And so the board of directors of the Nixon Foundation, which you're part of, Hugh, decided to give President Trump the Architect of Peace Award. That award was established after President Nixon died to recognize peacemakers. It's gone to 3 presidents in the past, none of them sitting presidents. So President Trump was the first sitting president to receive it. It's gone to royalty. It's gone to national security advisors like Henry Kissinger. And we just felt it was appropriate to recognize what he did in Gaza, what he's trying to do in Ukraine, and the 10 other conflicts that he's successfully brought to a conclusion. So he was in quite a good mood, and it was nice to have the Nixon family there with us and recognize President Trump for his great efforts to make peace around the world.
Ambassador O'Brien, not many people will recall, before you were National Security Advisor for President Trump, you were the Special Presidential Envoy on Hostage Affairs. And so you're very familiar with getting Americans out of jails and prisons and hostage situations. Compare your time to the degree of difficulty of getting the 20 living hostages out of Gaza from Hamas.
Yeah, that was really an extraordinary feat by the president and his diplomatic team of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner and Adam Boehler and, of course, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. Yeah, I was very concerned about the fate of the hostages. The guys at Hamas are so brutal and they're so cruel and they're such fanatics that I thought there was a very good chance that they would either never release the hostages to keep using them as leverage to protect themselves against Israeli attack, or that they would kill the hostages in a blaze of glory and go down, being the terrorist group that killed a large number of Israeli hostages. So to get them home was quite extraordinary. And Hugh, I'll tell you something. I said this back when I was National Security Advisor. President Trump is the greatest hostage negotiator in American history. And when I said it, I actually said it when I was a Spiha as well. The mainstream media mocked me. They gave me a hard time. The New Yorker magazine said that I was a current favorite trying to get a better job from the president by saying that. His work the past several weeks has made that point beyond debate. He's done an incredible job. He brought 55 hostages home. In the first term, he's brought at least that many home. And now he brought home 20 Israelis, not even Americans, 20 Israelis home. So he's just done an extraordinary job on this front. And he cares about the families. He cares about the captives. And he wants them home.
Now, pretty much every Israeli I speak to, whether it's Ambassador Oren or Haviv Reddy Gur or Nadav Ayal, or it doesn't matter. They all say President Trump is the best president ever for Israel. And I used to balk a little bit, and I'd always say, RN saved Israel in '73. But in fact, now it's kind of undeniable, given how much backing he's given to Israel. But do you expect the rest of this peace plan to work, Mr. Ambassador?
Look, it's going to be tough, right? Because we're dealing with Hamas. I mean, Israel will abide by the peace agreement, and the other Arab states will. But Hamas is a very brutal terrorist organization. They're like ISIS. They're motivated by the same ideology as Al Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood. They want to see Israel destroyed. They don't mind killing Palestinians and letting their own people die to achieve their goals. So getting them to disarm is going to be a hard task, even for President Trump. We'll have to see how the stabilization force looks. If the Arabs contribute, tough crack troops, the Turks are pretty tough. They've been fighting the Kurds for a long time in Turkey. Yeah, if they go in along with others and make a real effort to disarm Hamas, then I've got high hopes. But if we can't put together a force to go in and we'll deal with these thugs, in a very tough and a very brutal manner, and disarm them, then I'm concerned about the long-term viability of the peace program.
All right, last question, Mr. Ambassador. The summit is coming up in South Korea, where President Trump may or may not meet with General Secretary Xi Jinping, and you give a lot of advice and a lot of views on China. Do you think that can be successful?
I think it can be. I think the Chinese have overplayed their hand with the rare earth minerals boycotts and restrictions. I think we're going to start, manufacturing, mining and processing our RREs. I think that the president's going to, continue to get along very well with Prime Minister Modi, his good friend from the first term. We had a little rocky relationship with India over the trade, but I think the trade situation is going to get worked out with India. They're tough negotiators, but that's going to get worked out. And I think the India-U.S. relationship is going to, help contain China, and so I think that Xi Jinping is going to realize that he maybe overplay his hand and try and get a deal with the president of the United States, and hopefully he will. And if anyone can get the deal done, it'll be President Trump.
Okay, quick bonus question. How confident are you of the negotiations with India coming to a resolution? Because they are sort of our counterbalance completely to China. We need them.
We need them. They need us. When China attacked India in Trump's first term, we rallied to their side. We got them the intel they needed to make sure the Chinese didn't make any further incursions into India. We got them the cold weather gear their troops needed. So, look, I think that I think the relationship is going to stay strong. But keep in mind, Modi is a tough guy. He's a lot like he's the Trump of India. He's a very charismatic leader. He puts India first, like Trump puts America first. And the Indians are no slouches when it comes to trade negotiations. But look, I think we've got to realize the strategic value of that partnership. I think the Indians do as well. It is more important than the trade relationship, and that's going to be on one track. And then I think we'll get a trade deal done as well. So I think we'll have tough negotiations on the trade front with the Indians, but we'll end up in a good place with them.
Ambassador Robert O'Brien, always a pleasure talking to you. Follow him on X at Robert C. O'Brien. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I want to send everyone who is listening to pharmawindfall.com. All right, that is run by one of my sponsors, Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs. And Conservatives for Lower Healthcare Costs care about one big thing, that Big Pharma not take another big bag of money away from the United States taxpayer. Big Pharma won big with Obamacare. Big Pharma won big with the COVID relief bills because we really did need Operation Warp Speed from President Trump in the first term. Ambassador O'Brien was deeply involved in that. So sometimes Big Pharma needs to win, but they don't need to win right now. The Obamacare subsidies have got to go away. The Obamacare mess that was made by President Obama has got to be fixed. And Big Pharma will be hanging around with their lobbyists on every corner around the Capitol and every corner around the office buildings, and they'll try and be buttonholing every single Democrat and Republican to get more of your money. So go to pharmawindfall.com, because Big Pharma does not need another big handout. Join President Trump in his effort to bring good health care to everyone and to make sure it's just not bags of money for Big Pharma. pharmawindfall.com. If you're a regular listener to the program, you hear my regular sponsors almost every day. One of those is consumercellular.com, and I urge you to go to consumercellular.com. I tell you, you can have savings without sacrifice, but I also tell you, especially if you're over 50. And one of the questions I get the most from people about my sponsors is, why over 50? So Ed Evans, who is the CEO of Consumer Cellular, is here because he can explain it better than I can. Ed, welcome. It's good to see you. I'm tempted to talk to you about Georgia Tech football since you're an alum of Georgia Tech, but we got to go to this question I get. Why over 50, Ed? Why do you pitch to over 50 people?
It's a great question, and it's a very simple answer, and that is, as we sort of age in life and we move, through the various phases of our life, the reality is we use less and less data on a mobile network. So when you start and you're an 18-year-old, you're using 50, 60, 70 gigabytes of data on a monthly basis. When you're in over 50, 60, 70 years old, that data usage goes down pretty dramatically. And what that allows us to do is to provide pricing for an unlimited plan that is substantially below the big carriers, because we know you're not going to use as much as an 18 or a 19-year-old is going to be. So you get the exact same network, better customer service. We have the highest ranked customer service in the country of any other carrier. And it's simply because you're using less data. We're not running kids to soccer games every day, right? We're in Wi-Fi more often than what the typical 20-year-old is running around and doing things out there. So it really is just a matter of what your actual usage is. It's substantially less when you're over 50.
Now, so if you're over 50 and you're not using Consumer Cellular, call 1-800-411-4454, like I tell you every day, 1-800-411-4454. Tell them Hugh sent you. You can even say, Ed Evans sent me. I want the best deal possible, and they'll perk up. Ed, you mentioned something as well about customer service. I guarantee people that it takes 20 minutes to switch a cell phone service and that you have U.S.-based customer service, which appeals to people. How much does that appeal to people?
It's huge. It's probably one of our greatest selling points. I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than calling in to get a question answered about your cellular service. You hit a voice response unit, you hit 15 different buttons to get to some department. You may end up talking to somebody in Mumbai and you can't understand them and those types of things. We don't have any of that. You're going to be talking to somebody. My average speed of answer to get to a live person is less than 60 seconds almost every day. And you're going to talk to somebody who's trained in wireless. They're US based and they're used to dealing with this cohort. They understand that they're not expecting you to know everything about your cellular phone. You're going to have what you might perceive as a crazy question, but the reality is we get those every day, right? We understand that not everybody is tech savvy. So we're going to spend 8, 9, 10 minutes on the phone with you and not hustle to try to get you off to get to the next person in line.
And then the key question of all, why don't I get a free phone? And I have tried to explain to everyone, there is no free. There's no free buses coming in New York City. There is no free. What about the free phone offer that you compete against, Ed, based on price and service?
Sure, it's another great question. Even the big carriers have stopped saying free now. What you're seeing in all of the advertising is a new iPhone on us. And it's a little bit of a trick. I mean, basically what they're doing is they're going to put you on a financing plan over the next 24 or 36 months for that phone. And then they're going to give you a credit back for that monthly payment. And that's going to take place over the next 24 to 36 months. If you decide to leave that carrier early or something happens, the phone breaks, you're on the hook for that phone at that point in time. And the reality is you're paying so much for that service that all they're doing is discounting their service back to something more rational to take care of that phone financing that's really going on there. You can come to Consumer Cellular today where we have easy pay financing, actually buy a phone that you're going to own, put it on a 24-month financing plan, take that amount plus what our service is, and it's still going to be less than what the big carrier is charging you for that phone on us. So it's a play on words, and people fall for it all the time until they're 12 months in and something goes wrong, and then they're on the hook for it. It's basically a pseudo contract is what they're doing. They're finding a way to lock you in for the next several years on that service at a very expensive rate.
And so I want to go back and finish. We have 1 minute on where we began. Consumers who are over 50, it is easy to switch. Can I emphasize that too much? It is easy to switch from the expensive big cellular to cellular, consumercellular.com.
Now, it is very easy. And the other point to understand is that, look, there are a lot of carriers other than the big three that are out there, a lot of different brands that are out there that are advertising low price service. Beware, because what they're selling is what's called a deprioritized version of that big carrier's network. You're basically at the back of the line as the big carrier's customers get their data first, and then you're behind that. That's not the case with us. We don't have a deprioritized product. Our product is exactly the same as what the big carriers are offering today. It is very fast.
Stick with consumercellular.com, and when you go to consumercellular.com/Hugh or call them at 1-800-411-4454 and use my code Hugh25. Josh Kraushaar is the editor-in-chief of Jewish Insider, and you might think I'm going to talk to him about Israel, but I'm not. I'm going to talk to him about the NBA betting scandal. Why? Because Josh may or may not be a gambler, but he's in the demo that is driving this. Josh, do you bet on sports?
So I have all the apps to look at the point spreads. I look at all that information, but I never bet money. So it gets you in. I mean, I have a pool with some friends where we don't bet any money, but we bet against the spread for the football games every week. But I enjoy the games too much. Like, I don't need the gambling to get me into watching the Nats or watching the Commanders. It's exciting enough. So I do. We'll talk about this more, I'm sure, but I do worry, especially in the NBA, about the legalization of gambling and what it's done to the sport and how it's marketed.
Well, I want to hear your take on this. I'm talking to everyone about it because I think it's the biggest story short of war breaking out today by a long shot. I think it's truly indicative of what's going on in the culture and what has happened with gambling. But I'm a sports fan. I follow the Cleveland teams and Ohio State. I don't really care about anyone else. I root against USC and Michigan, of course. But I don't really care about maybe a little pro Notre Dame when I need something to watch. What has happened in your demo? Your demo has gone crazy for gambling.
Well, I think it's partly because we have such low attention spans now. So the games themselves, people don't watch the games in full anymore. So they need something to get people into watching. And gambling is one cheap way, one easy way of doing it. It avoids the hard work of actually marketing the sport on the networks, of actually doing the hard work of producing programming to get people into the NBA or get people into Major League Baseball. Gambling's a shortcut. Obviously, all of this was accelerated when Supreme Court legalized gambling everywhere. Online gambling companies proliferated across the country. You can just go on your phone and literally make a bunch of bets on sports. It's very, very easy to do. You asked me about my own personal habits. The other reason I don't really do online gambling is because I fear it is addictive. So I don't want to get into the habit even of making small bets that easily online. And it doesn't seem like the most productive way to spend money.
No,
but
so stupid.
But I mean,
so stupid.
There's what we learned today from the FBI case is really disturbing. And I think the sports leagues that don't draw bright red lines when it comes to any connection, any ties to gambling, or even if it's not their team or not their there's no connection directly, it creates a real potential for just a Black Sox like scandal. And the NBA, I think, is going
the Guardians have one. The Cleveland Guardians have 2 players on paid leave for allegedly one pitch. Right, that's the backstory. Luis Ortiz throwing one pitch in the dirt, and because AI covers the gambling world, because they're not dummies in Vegas and the sports books. They're looking for irregularities in betting. And it's like an instantaneous thing, so the athletes don't know. Even if they're tempted, they will be caught, Josh. Do you think this helps get that message across?
Well, I hope so. Look, one of the big problems is the proliferation of not just the bets on the games, but these so-called prop bets. So one of the NBA players that was indicted today, the bet isn't even on who's going to win the game. It's on how many minutes do you play or how many points do you score. And the allegation is that one of these NBA players basically sat himself out or claimed an injury early into the game. So it is just so easy to corrupt the whole process. That's why there have historically been such bright lines against gambling in professional sports and in amateur sports. It's why Pete Rose was banned from the game of baseball, despite people calling for him to be reinstated, because it's just so easy to corrupt the sport with just one or two bad actors. The NBA, I think Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, has been too close. Too eager to get some cheap bucks and to get gambling and the gambling dynamic into the sport. And I think the NBA is also feeling the pinch right now, and this could really have legs.
Carolyn Levitt on fire at the White House today. Before I go there, I want to remind you I'm in the Relief Factor studio, and I love my Relief Factor. I take it every day. I've told you for many years. It's the only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years. And so the fetching Mrs. Hewitt comes back from visiting the grandkids and my daughter today and says, we're supposed to take creatine now. And I said, honey, I've been making the same pitch for a dozen years. The only supplement I've ever taken is Relief Factor. I'm not sure I'm into the... Then I got told how I need to take creatine. I have no idea. I'm still kind of dead set against anything that I don't need except for Relief Factor, because Relief Factor works. If you've been running or racing or trundling or walking or working out forever, like I have been trying to do, then you'll know that occasionally you're going to get a minor ache and pain, or you're going to strain something and you go too far, too fast, or take too many days off and then go back too soon. No matter what kind of exercise you do, and you should be exercising every day, or at whatever age you are, you're going to get older tomorrow. Relief Factor will help with the minor aches and pains. Swear off the Aleve and the Advil and the over-the-counters. Give Relief Factor a try. Call 1-800-4 and the word relief. Get their starter pack for $19.95. Or visit their website and look for that starter pack. It's less than $1 a day for 3 weeks at relieffactor.com. Relieffactor.com. Still, the only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years is relieffactor.com, because it really does work. Now to Carolyn Levitt today. First up, SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Program, Cut number 9.
So we can just end this madness and this chaos and reopen the government. These are very avoidable consequences. The unnecessary pain, unfortunately, does not end there. Funding for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program known as SNAP, which provides food benefits to low-income families, is beginning to lapse this week in some states. If Democrats continue to hold Americans hostage, there will not be enough funds to provide SNAP benefits for more than 40 million Americans on November 1st. That is next week. Democrats are solely responsible for all of this unnecessary pain. Why are they doing it? To give taxpayer-funded health care benefits to
Okay, I want you to
illegal
understand the message. SNAP is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's food for poor people. And it's going to run out of money because of the Democrat Schumer shutdown, which is the Seinfeld shutdown. Secondly, Carolyn Leavitt came loaded for bear on the White House renovation, cut number 11.
Sounds like the answer is yes, he can tear down whatever he wants. And then secondly, I mean...
that's not what we're saying. That's a legal opinion that's been held for many years. And
interpreting it.
No, it's something that presidents have done for years and years. In fact, I have some photos here, thank you, Pat, to show you the construction that's taken place on the White House grounds. This is the construction of the West Wing in 1902. Look at this, the construction of the West Terrace in 1902. These images look quite similar to what you and the American people are seeing today, the construction of the East Terrace as well. You look at the construction of the West Wing expansion in 1934. So, look, this is a legal opinion that's been held for many years. Look at, this is 1950. It looks a lot like what you were seeing today.
Can he
Oh, I love Carolyn Leavitt. It's not a story. The NBA is a story, and I'll continue to talk about it. Seth Mandel is a senior editor at Commentary Magazine, a regular participant in the Commentary podcast, and as listeners know, I listen to every Commentary podcast eventually. Now, today's came out only 5 hours ago, so I missed my window to be able to listen to it. But I'm betting they did not talk about the NBA betting scandal. Moreover, if there's a podcast that's least likely to ever talk about the NBA betting scandal, it's probably the Commentary podcast. Seth Mandel, do you think anybody on your podcast gambles at all? I don't.
No, I don't think they do. Good to see you, Hugh. But I will say that as far as, you know, if anybody mentioned it, we do talk about the Yankees a lot on the podcast. So sports do come up on the podcast itself.
Yeah, but I know, for example,
right, the NBA
when
scandal has.
the Ruthless podcast, they have a Ruthless parlay, right? Gambling is part of their shtick, where they bet on the Colts, the Bengals, the Panthers, and the Vikings every week because those are their 4 clubs, and it hits like once a season. It's in part of the weave of the show. You guys never talk about it, so I'm pretty sure it will be foreign territory tomorrow. I got to prep you. I'm doing show prep for you, Seth. First of all, here's Kash Patel this morning making the announcement, cut number 2.
3 of the named defendants are...
Good morning. Today we are here in New York to announce a historic arrest across a wide-sweeping criminal enterprise that envelops both the NBA and La Cosa Nostra. The men and women up here standing with me represent a small portion of the leadership team that brought profound justice in an era that needed it more than any. I'll just highlight some of the details in the case and the FBI work, and then you'll hear from the others. But as you now know, individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today, former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Cosa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese crime families. And
all right, stop right there. Seth Mandel, when was the last time you heard those 4 crime families named in the same sentence?
No, I don't know. Giuliani?
Yeah. Giuliani broke
89?
them up. And we think that that is kind of like common wisdom that Giuliani broke the mob. All right, so this has been going on for a few years. It's vast. It's got big names in it. I got to play for you because this is what's relevant to the Commentary podcast, which does cover the media breakdown in the age of Trump. Stephen A. Smith on ESPN earlier today, cut number 13.
How many times, for one incident after another, have I said, Trump is coming? He's coming. I'm going to say it on national television again. Bad Bunny is performing at the Super Bowl, and all of a sudden you hearing ICE is going to be there, looking to engage in mass deportations. The Super Bowl, disrupting things. Big night for the NBA. Wembanyama put on a show. That has now been smeared because we're talking about this story, okay? Remember, Trump has a long, long history connected to the world of sports because...
It goes on. It goes on, Seth. It's Trump derangement syndrome at its finest. The FBI investigation has been going on for years. It's 4 crime families. It's 11 states. How does anyone even make that jump?
I don't know. I think it's just, it's this belief in the vibe, right? There's this vibe and whatever is happening has to go along with that certain vibe. So if there's construction on the White House, it's not, adding on a ballroom. It's, a Mussolini type fascist temple being built or whatever. I think everything just gets put in the along with the narrative of whatever's going on that day. And yeah, I think it's funny because, Trump does have some history with some sports, but it's really been the opposite, right? I mean, his relationships that he built with Ultimate Fighting Championship promoters and fighters and stuff were very good to him and helped him. So I don't know that we know of Trump, aside from the Colin Kaepernick incident, really trying to go after sports in a way that would hurt them and hurt their visibility among
it's a
among the
ridiculous
public.
chart. Trump tried to buy the Cleveland Indians when they were the Indians and now the Guardians a few years ago, and the president and I talked about that once. He owned the USFL team in New York for a while. He liked sports. He did have casinos, but it's a symptom, not an explanation. John was talking yesterday, John Podhortz, editor-in-chief of Commentary, was talking yesterday about the East Wing and how dull it is and how he used to walk through tent after tent after tent. Here's Carolyn Levitt today talking with CBS's Weijia Zhang about the White House ballroom, cut number 11.
Sounds like the answer is yes, he can tear down whatever he wants. And then secondly,
Weijia, that's not what we're saying. That's a legal opinion that's been held for many years. And
interpreting it.
No, it's something that presidents have done for years and years. In fact, I have some photos here. Thank you, Pat. To show you the construction that's taken place on the White House grounds. This is the construction of the West Wing in 1902. Look at this, the construction of the West Terrace in 1902. These images look quite similar to what you and the American people are seeing today, the construction of the East Terrace as well. Look at the construction of the West Wing expansion in 1934. So look, this is a legal opinion that's been held for many years. Look at, this is 1950. It looks a lot like what you were seeing today.
Seth, Carolyn Levitt doesn't play to win. She plays to crush. And she did. She had these 5 pictures. How long will this story linger with us?
It depends what comes next. There will be something else to focus on, and when that comes, it'll grab a bite. But people in the press and in the public walk past the White House all the time, and a lot of the live shots that you see about on network news are from someone stationed outside the White House. And so I think that this may carry on not as the main story necessarily, but literally going to have people figuring out whether they should be moving their live shots and stuff like that. So having it in the background physically is probably going to keep it in the news.
I hadn't thought about that. Every live shot is always of the West Wing from the driveway, and you see the National Security Advisor's office, and you see the West Wing entrance in the front. There's a side entrance as well. Like John, I worked in the White House complex in the 1980s for President Reagan, and you would walk forever from the old EOB over to the West Wing into the sometimes up. It's a terrible place to work. John was exactly right. But I think I went to the East Wing once over the course of my time there, and I don't think I've ever been back, Seth. Have you ever been to the East Wing?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's simply not interesting to people, but our media is deranged. And my exit question, Seth, how long is it going to be deranged?
I mean, that's like asking to predict the weather. Who knows? But I don't think that I don't think it's going to stop until Trump is out of office, right? I mean, we'll see. We'll see what comes up after him. But I think you can bank on there being this atmosphere through this second Trump term, and then it will probably pick up because towards the end of the term, he will make another joke about maybe not wanting to leave. Maybe he'll make a joke about wanting to move into this new East Wing. It's so nice, something like that, and that that'll kick it up. But I think it will have to wait until we see what comes after him.
I cannot wait to see if anybody else tries to tie Donald Trump to the NBA investigation by the FBI. We'll see tomorrow, and I'll hear tomorrow on the Commentary Podcast. Seth Mandel, always a pleasure. Thank you, Seth. I want to tell everyone, you can follow Seth, by the way, over at Seth Mandel, Seth A. Mandel, I believe, on X. And listen to the Commentary Podcast. It's really the smartest thing out there. That's why I listen to Abe Greenwald, John Podhoretz, Matt Continetti, Seth, Christine Rosen, every day that they put one out, and it's usually Monday through Friday. Americans for Free Market, sponsor the Hugh Hewitt Show, for free markets, plural.com, and for is F-O-R, not F-O-U-R, F-O-R, for freemarkets.com. What's it about? Making sure that debanking never happens again. Under the Obama and Biden administration, financial regulators were okaying or turning another eye to when banks deregulated or debanked unfavored political opinions. They went about the business of throwing people out of their banks, making it clear that they were not welcome, not allowing some 501c3s and some organizations to bank with them, in fact, denying credit and all the other sorts of stuff, especially I think mostly those stories came in connection with guns. Well, the financial system, like the First Amendment, should be blind to whoever is using it, provided they are using it legally. And the First Amendment has limits concerning its legality as well, but so ought the financial markets to be free and open to all who are dealing in fair and legal ways. Support that at forfreemarkets.com, F-O-R, freemarkets.com. I had lunch today with one of the great sponsors of our program, and Bradbury is the CEO of the American Exploration and Production Council, axpc.org. And I talk about axpc.org a lot. And they do sponsor the show, but what lunch doesn't go with me. I'm just a geek about permitting because I spent 27 years doing it, and Ann has been in the business for a long time, and she hosts a podcast on it that we were talking about today called Longer Laterals. And I looked at her kind of funny because I know a little bit about drilling and a lot about permitting. And I said, longer laterals. She said, it's we want to go further. You drill straight down, then you make a right turn, and you go longer laterally to reach oil and natural gas. And it's fracking and it's exploration, and it's a great way to produce more energy in America. And the American, or AXPC.org, is the organization, the American Exploration and Production Council, that represents a lot of people in the business of producing oil and natural gas and the pipelines through which it moves. And Ann Bradbury knows everything about this stuff, and I know a lot about this stuff. And they are in the business of making it possible. Most of the time we spent was talking about the fact that New England, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, New Hampshire, are so screwed by our permitting system because they can't get natural gas via a pipeline from the Marcellus shale deposit in Pennsylvania, West Virginia, a little bit in Ohio. They can't get that gas up to New England to bring down the cost of heating houses in the winter because New York won't allow them to build a pipeline. Kathy Hochul, New York Democrats. So all the Democrats in New York are screwing all the Democrats in New England. And pretty much the only Republican left in New England is Susan Collins, and she'll be reelected handily, but she would support permitting reform. I'm sure John Fetterman would. I know Dave McCormick would. So Ann Bradbury and I talked about permitting for about an hour and a half, and I had to come do the program, so I said, I got to run, I got to go do the show. But I want you to go over to axpc.org. And the reason you want to do that and listen to longer laterals and actually get involved in telling your congressman and your senator that we really do have to fix NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. We really do have to prioritize pipeline construction and exploration is because energy is freedom. And I've been saying that for years before AXPC.org came along, for years and years and years. I'm just glad to have a sponsor that is, all my sponsors are congruent with my point of view, if there's a point of view to be had. And I use all my sponsors. I can't use AXPC.org because I'm not in the business of building pipelines anymore. But for so many decades, I was in the business of getting permits. And I was telling Ann about my experience on behalf of an old client, no longer in business, been bought by a bigger oil company, who bought oil fields just full of California gnatcatchers. I mean, it was like gnatcatcher heaven. So I went to work on that for a long time. And oil and gas people are used to drilling and producing and moving on and cleaning up. Right? So the environmental regulations around oil and natural gas are extraordinary. The care with which they proceed is extraordinary. I know you watched Landman and you saw the rig blow up. Now, that's not really, that's good TV, and it's not really the way oil and gas production works in the United States. Rough work. Got to be a rough neck to do the work. It's hard work. I'm not saying that. It can be dangerous. But it's not like dangerous on a daily basis as Landman makes it out to be. And the American regulatory system makes it very safe and very, very, very clean. Carbon capture is now a reality. I spent some time with Doug Burgum when he was Governor Burgum, before he became Secretary Burgum, talking about carbon capture, learned a lot about it. It's so advanced now. It can be done clean. But what I really want you to focus on, if you're in New England and you're listening to me right now, or you're anywhere in the United States and you're paying too much to heat your home, and you would really, and you think you're paying too much for gas at the pump, and that is the case in California, the answer is always more production of everything. And it's an all of the above approach, if it makes sense. I don't want to subsidize dumb stuff. Right? There were windmills on the 10 freeway on the way to the desert from the coast of California. When I first got there in 1978, I drove past them. They're still there. Windmills make sense in a few places. They don't make a lot of sense in the ocean. At least they don't to me. And I think the environmental effects are absolutely real in the ocean. They're not so real on land, although they do kill a few California condors. And that is a fact. It's an endangered species, one of the few that are really, really endangered. And they're bad for California condors. They just are. So I'm not sure about windmills. But I know that you can do oil and gas extraction very cleanly, very effectively, very efficiently for Americans. And we don't want to pay more, but especially if you're living in New England. In New Hampshire right now, you're listening to me in Maine or in Massachusetts or in Rhode Island or Connecticut. Call your senators and congresspeople and tell them to support permitting reform so you can get pipelines to bring you natural gas to heat your homes, or build an LNG harbor so you can import it. That's kind of crazy since it's a pipeline away. But if New York State's going to screw all the blue states, don't blame the Republicans for your heating bill. That's really just the Democrats not wanting you to get the natural gas from Pennsylvania. And it's time to change that. AXPC.org. Let me also tell you about J.D. Vance today in Tel Aviv, asking about the Judea and Samaria and the West Bank, cut number 8.
When I asked about it, somebody told me that it was a political stunt, that it had no practical significance. It was purely symbolic. I mean, look, if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that. But we certainly weren't.
They should not have taken that. Some right-wingers took a symbolic vote, forced a symbolic vote in the Knesset today. Bad timing. John Thune on Fox News earlier today, cut number 5.
I think this vote today is a really challenging one for the Democrats. It's very hard to defend voting against. Ron Johnson is offering a counter proposal, Dana, that is, as was pointed out, would pay everybody who's working. So any what they call accepted employees, anybody who's currently working and not getting paid would get paid under this proposal. The Democrats are going to try and counter it with a political gimmick, which would pay federal employees once, but then continue the shutdown. they're trying to have it both ways. I mean, this is all about politics for them. If they open up the government, their left-wing base goes nuts. If they don't vote for Ron Johnson or something else, then a lot of the federal employees are going to be without pay. And you got a whole lot of other programs out there, including the SNAP program that's available to people who really need.
That's the one that's maddening. And Secretary Sean Duffy, Secretary of Transportation, said this today, cut number 6.
We are all about safety, and we will make sure we work every day on that part of our job. But again, I can't guarantee you that your flight's going to be on time. I can't guarantee you that your flight's not going to be canceled. It's going to depend on our air traffic controllers coming in to work every single day. And again, my message to them is, one, thank you for coming and working. We appreciate that. Come to work, even if you don't get a paycheck. We need you to come to work. But if they do not, we'll know whose fault it is.
And that would be the Democrats. Very effective messaging, because it is true. As you know, on the Hugh Hewitt show today, I've been talking about a lot about the NBA betting scandal, because it's just starting. It's a brand new story, and I'm so stunned by it. David Drucker is a superb reporter. He's with the Dispatch. And David, I don't know if you have a hot take on the NBA corruption, but I'm wondering how, as a reporter, you would go about covering this. I think it's really going to be a lot of books. Someone's going to write a book about this.
Yeah, I was immediately fixated on it this morning. And, my first thought was, it's not just one coach and one player. Now, maybe it is, but usually what we find out is all of these guys are buddies, they're all friends, and they all, when there's something like this happens, occasionally it's isolated, but often with these high net worth individuals, competitive individuals, there's just a lot involved. But we will see. The way, Hugh, I guess I would approach this would be very carefully, because you cannot impugn character. I mean, we're not talking here about political messaging and things like that. I mean, this is about, potential or alleged criminal activity. This is about activity that could really be damage the credibility of the National Basketball Association. And so stories like this, you have to go about very carefully, get multiple sources, and have things super confirmed. You can't speculate if you're reporting.
Now, would you go to Vegas and talk to the legitimate, I'm putting my air quotes around that, bookies and casino operators and the people in the gaming business to ask them what they're going to do about this problem? Because to me, it seems like a malignancy on the society.
I definitely would. Now, that might be a related story, but just as important. But absolutely, you want to talk to everybody when you approach any story that has a lot of threads to it and a lot of fallout or impact. You want to talk to all of the different communities of people, or micro industries of people within a larger industry that have something to say about this, that know something about this. And sometimes that just know the process, because part of reporting on something like this, anything really, and this is my approach to political campaigns and any story I write, is you want to know the context, and to know the context, you have to know process often. So even if the process doesn't end up in my story, in order to get the story correct, you have to understand why things are done the way they're done and who is doing them.
So we got 2 senators from Nevada. We got 2 senators from New Jersey. We got senators all over from California where there's tribal gaming. Do you expect this to be a big issue on the Hill? Remember in the 50s, we had mob hearings. Do you expect anyone on the Hill to try and make hay out of this?
It wouldn't surprise me. And I would say I think it sort of depends on how widespread this is. Like, if it just so happens that they got the 2 guys and that's that, maybe not. But if this turns out to be widespread, where you have multiple players and coaches and other people related to the NBA or professional sports beyond the NBA involved in this, implicated in this, then you're more likely to see members of Congress get involved. I mean, if for no other reason than from a politically selfish point of view, Americans care about their sports, and they're going to pay attention to things that have to do with sports, even if they don't care about politics. And that's a way for elected officials to get their mug in front of people that don't care about politics.
Oh, well said. Yeah, the Guardian's have two players on the bench. They did not do the playoffs because they're under suspicion and they're being investigated for gambling on one pitch on a prop bet. And it has just never occurred to me that you could bet on one pitch, but of course you can bet on everything. And now we've computerized it, made it accessible. I think the addiction rate and the bankruptcy, divorce, abuse numbers are going to go off the charts over 10 years. Do you share my pessimism?
I'm sort of agnostic on it, but what you were saying is a definite possibility. I mean, just common sense says that when a vice is more widely available, when I'm missing the word here, but when the stigma is the word I was looking for, when stigma is removed, people are going to do things more, right? I mean, this is the argument against legalizing marijuana is sure, everybody was doing it. And you're right, you know, people don't smoke marijuana and get violent, let's say, right? But it can be a very dangerous drug. And by making it legal, the stigma for underage kids is removed. And I know this from being a kid. I looked at when I was a kid, the fact that alcohol was legal, even though it wasn't legal for me yet, was a huge deal in how I approached my willingness to consume it versus drugs that were illegal at any age, like marijuana and all of the other drugs.
And that applies absolutely to gambling. Follow David M. Drucker on X at David M. Drucker. Read him in the Dispatch and hear him here every week that we are lucky. Thank you, David. We could not have covered in the Morning Jolt because it happened this afternoon, the NBA cheating scandal. Jim Garrity, I heard you talking with Generalissimo, and you put $5 on the fact that I would be asking you about this, so I guess we owe you. Really, are you a gambler?
Well, first, I am not. I actually think, I mean, occasionally I'll fill out an NCAA bracket pool, very rarely do any well in any of that stuff. I think the legalization and broadening the prevalence of sports gambling has been very bad for the country. I think a lot of people just cannot handle the temptation. But here's the thing. If you think I'm going to change my mind on it, you can bet on it through DraftKings, which is the official sponsor of the Hugh Hewitt gambling addiction program. No. So look, I don't follow the NBA a lot, but my sense was the Portland Trail Blazers had a really rough way to start the season. You've got just a killer lineup of Golden State Warriors, LA Lakers, LA Clippers, and then the FBI. And people have been saying that the...
See, I'm going to use that. I might steal that tonight. You might hear that in about an hour.
People have been saying that the Miami Heat have a problem with defense. They don't mean blocks and rebounds and steals. They mean legal defense. This is a pretty strong case, it looks like. So.
All right, look, the indictment is deeply disheartening. And I sent it to my boys because I took my boys when they were 14 or 15 to Las Vegas so that they could see all the dummies putting their money into slots and everybody on the floor and point out they don't make anything in Las Vegas. Nothing is made here. Everything you see, all these giant hotels and all this, it's all paid by people who come here and leave their money intentionally. I think gambling is really a tax on stupidity. Do you think it's now become such a temptation to corruption? Really, every game, every second. The Guardians lost 2 players this summer, both of whom would have been useful to the pennant run that didn't happen, to gambling charges. They have not yet been found guilty by Major League Baseball. Do you think there's any way to put the genie back in the bottle, which is the phrase I bet we'll hear the most over the next couple of days?
Oof, that is good. I just want to point out my perspective on gambling came from college years. We went up to Philadelphia to watch a college basketball game. Team I was rooting for did badly. So good thing that habit ended early in my life. But my buddies, I was like, oh, let's go to Atlantic City. Now, I had no desire to go to Atlantic City, but I went with them. And Atlantic City has always been on rough space, but it was not particularly attractive. They had the Trump Taj Mahal back then and all that stuff. But there were little pawn shops just outside the casinos. And I remember this sign. I'm never going to forget this. Hewitt said, "We buy wedding rings." You want to talk about telling a story? Excuse me. Talk about telling a story in 4 words, right? You know exactly why they're buying wedding rings. People go to the casinos and they bet more than they can handle. They bet more. They bet the mortgage. They bet the groceries. They bet find themselves in a hole, keep betting, and suddenly they find themselves having to pawn their wedding rings or whatever else they have on them. I just looked. There was this sign that human beings are not great at resisting temptation. I know the lesson of prohibition. I know the idea that when something is very common like alcohol, it does not make sense for the government to try to ban it. But I do think that, legal gambling was something where we allowed it in Atlantic City, we allowed it in Nevada, and I didn't mind the fact that there were two places where you could do it everywhere. I concur with you. State lotteries are taxes on stupidity, right? All the money you spend on lottery tickets, you could put it into a 401k, you could put it into a whole bunch of other stuff that would actually give you guaranteed returns, or almost near guaranteed returns, or much better returns. Or you could keep buying, lottery tickets and hoping for that 1,000,000 to 1 shot. So,
if you want to gamble on the stock market.
Sorry?
If you want to gamble, go play flyers on the stock market and do puts and calls, and know that you can, without being naked to losing your shirt, if you want to gamble. I just think it's so stupid to allow, even when Prohibition ended, we didn't allow everyone to run a hooch in their house. Now you can gamble from your home and on your device wherever you are. It's impossible for the addicted to escape it. I just think it was the worst idea that came down the pike in the last 25 years.
Yeah, and I'm glad that every ad we see for it always says at the end, if you have a gambling problem, dial 1-800 such and such. Look, I would love to say, it's my libertarian instincts of, hey, as long as you know the risks, go right ahead and do it. I think the evidence is that people don't know how to handle the risks. It's really popular amongst young men. What I thought was really disturbing was there was a study of domestic abuse rates, and they found out that when the home team in the NFL has an unexpected loss, domestic abuse rates go up 10%. That's not a huge amount, but again, in that figure, you can tell the story. You can see the fact that somebody bets money that they couldn't afford to lose or really didn't want to lose. They lose the money. They're in a really foul mood. One thing leads to another. So again,
all right, last question. You made me remember this. I wrote a column. I may play a J.D. Vance poll after this as well. I wrote a column for Fox Today about Jen Psaki on a podcast, making a joke about how Usha Vance, blink your eyes if you need help, we'll come get you. In my day, you never mocked or minimized domestic abuse because it's 10 million times a year in the United States. Were you as put off by that? Jen Psaki's a smart lefty. She knows better than that. There are some things that you don't joke about.
Does she? Color me. Look, the attitude of a whole bunch of people on the left is that Donald Trump is the devil and J.D. Vance is the assistant devil, and that you can say anything you want about them. There's nothing below the belt. There's nothing too much. There's nothing too far. So, no, I'm not surprised, Hugh. And I don't think that the all manner of all evils must be found in that. Although I did see earlier this week, Hugh, declarations that Vance is even worse than Trump. So,
those have begun.
Yeah. So at some point, Vance will be the nominee and Trump will not be the nominee. I suppose things could shake out, maybe Rubio or somebody, but someone will follow Trump as the Republican nominee, and you will start hearing, if only he were as sensible and reasonable and easygoing as Trump. Trump, at least, X, Y, and Z. This new Republican is even worse, blah, blah, because
the strange new respect period for Donald Trump is going to be very disorienting for a lot of the media. Jim Garrity can be followed on X at Jim Garrity, read in the Washington Post, and then subscribed to for the Morning Jolt at nationalreview.com. Thank you, Jim Garrity. Vice President Vance, by the way, was boarding Air Force Two to return to the United States, got asked about Jen Psaki's suggestion that he was abusing the second lady. Joke. He said this.
Former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki made some comments suggesting that your wife, the second lady, needed to be saved from you. How do you feel about comments like that being made while you're here with the second lady?
Oh, I think it's disgraceful, but of course the second lady can speak for herself. And I'm very lucky to have a wonderful wife, and I know, or at least I hope that my wife feels the same about me. But we are very lucky to have this journey, or I should say, I'm very lucky to go on this journey with a very loving wife. We're going to keep on serving the country together, and I'm honored to have Usha by my side on this trip in particular. But
very classy, Mr. Vice President. Well done. Since you're in Israel, I want to remind everyone the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is our sponsor. Here is what Yael Eckstein, president of the American Fellowship of Christians and Jews, has to say about what they are doing now that a ceasefire is in effect.
Life in Israel, on one hand, we're unified. We are there for one another. We're faithful. We're resilient. We continue to go out and rejoice. We have weddings and celebrations that we're able to smile and dance at. But what we also feel is a very stark reminder every second of every day that we are surrounded by enemies. At any moment, God forbid, we can be attacked just like we were attacked on October 7th.
So as recovery goes forward, the ceasefire gets deeper. People like Vice President Vance make it permanent. Please remember, Israel needs your help. The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews has a banner at the top of HughHewitt.com. Please go and click on that. Be as generous as you can. We appreciate every donation, as does the IFCJ. It's all tax deductible. That's the banner at the top of HughHewitt.com to support the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Fun reminder, I'm in the Relief Factor studio. I open the show by always taking my Relief Factor. I close it most days by reminding you, don't leave home without it, especially for my commuting audience, especially in places like the Beltway in Atlanta and around New York, where you're just stuck in endless traffic on the East Coast now that we're into the full drive time. If anything hurts, it's a minor problem. Just to that, it nags you every single day that you get into the car, every single day, and you dread it because you know that no matter how entertaining I am, no matter how much I have to offer you in terms of substance and fun, no matter the NBA betting scandal, whatever, you know that Relief Factor would make that commute easier if you would just call 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Tell them you want that starter pack for $19.95. Try it for 3 weeks. You take 3 a day for the first week, 2 a day, packets for the second week, and then 1 packet a day for as long as you want to keep feeling rid of the minor aches and pains that come with exercise and aging. You're definitely doing the latter. You should be doing the former. I hope you will give it a shot. That's 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief, or visit their website. The starter pack's there as well, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com.